Dr. Lawrence, let's talk about the speaker that's coming in to our AAI event. That's Brian Griffith, who is with the EPA and the Gulf of Mexico initiative. Um, what's your view of that effort as it might impact Iowa agriculture with EPA's strategy?
Well, obviously, Iowa drains to the Mississippi River, it drains to the Gulf. So what the programs EPA has for the Gulf has an impact on Iowa. This Gulf of Mexico program that Brian is the leader of, director of, has been around since 1988. It's committed to voluntary, non-regulatory programs. It's based on scientific information and technical information in making those decisions. So it sounds like the type of program that Iowa agriculture very much could partner with to address this issue.
From your perspective, do you think that we're going to have to come up with a nutrient reduction program here in the state of Iowa, the nutrients coming off our land going into our rivers?
I think we will. I mean, we look at what's going on elsewhere in the country. You look at the Chesapeake Bay, where EPA has stepped in with a very heavy regulatory approach after many years of trying to get voluntary action to work. They've not been happy with the results. They've gone regulatory there. We've seen actions in Florida and as close as Kansas where people have sued EPA to enforce the Clean Water Act, to force more regulation or more stipulations on non-point source activity. What we have here, and working with EPA Gulf program through Brian, is an opportunity to develop a program based on voluntary approaches to addressing nutrient runoff, and particularly as it relates to the hypoxia in the Gulf.
Is Iowa State doing work that may be able to allow us to implement a part of this strategy in a manner that agriculture can endorse?
Yes, in a couple of different levels. First off, a lot of our research over the years, field level, bench level research, has been addressed at nutrient reduction, efficiency of fertilizer use, of soil conservation practices, farming practices, and so on, that improve profitability but protect the environment. More recently, in a program or a project led by Secretary Bill Northey and Dean Wendy Winterstein here at Iowa State University, we're partnering to develop a nutrient reduction strategy to address the request from EPA that Iowa reduce nitrogen and phosphorus to the Gulf by 45%. That's not 4 or 5%. That's a 45% reduction is the target set by the Hypoxia Task Force. So we're not talking about tweaking things around the edges. We're talking about significant changes. What we're doing now, and we started this last fall, is going through a science assessment of the practices that we've been researching over the years, practices that farmers have been using for years. Things like timing and amount of application, or the placement and the form of the product that's being used, cover crops, tillage practices, wetlands. The new one is bioreactors as a filter for nitrogen in particular. A lot of that research is done, but what we're trying to do is pull those pieces together into, in simple terms, a spreadsheet, if you will. This type of practice is capable of this type of nutrient reduction. Here are the other effects. What's it do to local water quality as well as hypoxia? What's the cost? And I think that's the important one that we're tracking as well. And so doing an assessment of these technologies that are available, ones that we're hearing about, going back to the literature to see how effective they are, and build that up to say, okay, if we're expected to make this kind of reduction, here's the tools we have in the toolbox, here's the cost of those tools, and then go back to EPA, go to the Farm Bill, go to farm leaders, go to the farmers themselves and say, okay, what of this is possible? What's feasible? What makes sense? What doesn't? And how can we work towards achieving that goal?